A 12-year-old black girl, polite and soft-spoken, walks onto a luxury flight holding her boarding pass. She's traveling alone, but with full permission. Her seat? First class. But the flight attendant stops her in the aisle, frowns, and says the words that sting. "This section isn't for you." The girl tries to explain, but no one listens, until the phone rings in the cockpit, and someone realizes exactly who her father is. The boarding gate buzzed with the usual noise, footsteps, suitcase wheels, and tired voices. But for Aria James, this moment felt big. She was only 12, but she'd flown many times. Her dad made sure of that. This time, though, she was traveling alone, from New York to Los Angeles, to surprise her mom for her birthday. Everything was arranged. Private escort to the gate. First-class seat. A pre-cleared flight crew. But all that didn't matter the second she stepped onto the plane. Aria walked calmly down the jet bridge, backpack tight on her shoulders, a fresh boarding pass in hand. Her hair was done neatly in 2 braided puffs, her outfit simple and clean. She smiled politely at the woman at the door. "Hi," Aria said cheerfully. The woman didn't smile back. Her name tag read Jenna. "You're alone?" Jenna asked, blinking. "Yes, ma'am," Aria said. Jenna looked her up and down, then down at her boarding pass. "Seat 2A, first class." Jenna frowned. "I think there's a mistake," she said slowly. "This section is reserved for premium travelers." Aria's smile faded a little. "That's my seat." Jenna gave a tight laugh, then waved to another flight attendant. "We've got another boarding issue," she said, loud enough for passengers to hear. Aria shifted on her feet. "I'm supposed to sit here." Jenna stepped in front of her and crossed her arms. "Sweetheart," she said, "this isn't coach. Let's find your real seat, okay?" Aria's fingers tightened around her boarding pass. "I'm not lost," she said softly. "My dad booked this seat." Jenna didn't move. She reached for Aria's pass and scanned it with her tablet. The name popped up. "Aria James, seat 2." Jenna stared at it. Still, she didn't move. "I don't know how you got this," she said under her breath. "But you can't just sit anywhere because you want to feel special." Aria's heart dropped. She had done everything right. But suddenly, none of it seemed to matter. Behind her, passengers were starting to whisper. In front of her, Jenna stood like a wall. Aria looked down, and she did the only thing she could think of. She pulled out her phone and pressed one button. "Hi, Daddy," she said quietly. "The lady won't let me sit down." Aria held the phone close to her ear, speaking softly. The cabin around her grew quieter. Some passengers looked away. Others leaned in. Jenna narrowed her eyes. "You don't need to call anyone, sweetheart. I'm just trying to help." But Aria didn't answer her. Instead, she said into the phone, "Yeah." She said, "I can't sit in 2A. "No." She didn't check the ticket first. "Okay, I'll wait." Then she lowered the phone slowly and looked at Jenna. "My dad said to wait right here." Jenna rolled her eyes. "Okay, little miss attitude," she muttered. "Fine. But if security has to come talk to you, don't blame me." She turned and walked a few rows up, muttering under her breath. Aria stood still. Behind her, a man in a business suit frowned. He'd heard the entire thing. So had the woman across the aisle. "That's not right," the man said quietly. "She's just a kid," the woman added. She wasn't even rude. Up in the cockpit, the pilot's radio buzzed. He reached for the button. "Captain Richards speaking." A voice replied calmly on the other end. "Put me on with your head attendant right now." Richards blinked. "Who is this?" The voice didn't yell, didn't rush. It simply said, "I'm Brandon James. My daughter is on your flight. She's being stopped from sitting in the seat I paid for. And I own 52% of the airline you're flying for." The pilot sat back slowly. The color drained from his face. He reached for the intercom. Back in the cabin, Jenna walked past Aria again with a smirk. "Ready to move now? Do you want this to get worse?" Just then, the overhead speaker crackled to life. "Lead attendant Jenna, please report to the cockpit immediately." She froze. Passengers turned their heads. Arya quietly stepped to the side and let her walk by. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She didn't need to, because now everything was about to change. Jenna straightened her uniform as she entered the cockpit. She wasn't nervous, not yet. She figured the captain just needed an update or wanted her side before the girl's dad made a scene. She stepped in, smiling tightly. "Captain Richards, you called?" The captain didn't look up. "Sit down," he said. Jenna blinked. "Excuse me?" I said sit. She sat. Captain Richards finally looked at her, face unreadable. Then he slowly turned the cockpit tablet toward her. It showed a profile, a name, a photo, and the company's internal flight manifest. Brandon James, owner, 52% stake, SkyWest Global Aviation Holdings. Daughter, Arya James. Seat. Jenna's face dropped. She couldn't speak. "I just got off the phone with him," Richard said. "He wasn't yelling. He didn't threaten. He didn't need to, because we all work for him." Jenna's mouth opened, but her voice caught. "I didn't know. You didn't check." The captain snapped. "You saw a young black girl in a hoodie and assumed she was in the wrong place. I was trying to protect—" "Stop." Richard stood. "Don't dig deeper. Just fix it." Jenna sat frozen for another second, then quickly stood and walked out. As she stepped back into the cabin, she felt every eye watching her. Some looked angry. Some looked disappointed. Arya stood right where she had left her, calm and quiet. Jenna cleared her throat. "Miss James," she said, forcing a smile, "please let me show you to your seat." Arya looked at her and said nothing. She just walked past her, straight into first class, and sat down. Jenna tried to follow, but Arya held up her hand. "You said you were just trying to help," she said quietly. "But you never helped anyone but yourself." Jenna's face turned bright red. Behind her, someone clapped once, then another. Soon the cabin filled with soft, slow applause. Not for Jenna, but for the little girl who stood her ground and never raised her voice to prove who she was. Arya placed her backpack gently under her seat and the leather was smooth and spotless. A chilled bottle of water sat on the tray beside her. The seatbelt stretched across her lap like it belonged there, because it did. Jenna stood nearby, unsure of what to do. She was supposed to offer a drink, adjust the seat, smile. But right now, she could barely breathe under the weight of every stare in that cabin. The woman across the aisle leaned toward Arya with a warm smile. "That was very brave," she whispered. Arya gave a small nod. "Thank you." From 2 rows back, the businessman spoke louder this time. "You know what's funny? No one stopped her because she was loud or rude. They stopped her because she was quiet, and they thought that meant weak." Jenna turned toward him. "Sir, I was just—" "No," he said, holding up a hand. "You were just caught." Jason, another flight attendant, approached with a tray. He was younger, maybe in his 20s, and clearly uncomfortable with everything going on. He gently placed a drink on Arya's tray table. "I'm really sorry," he said. "You should have been treated better." Arya nodded again. "It's okay." "It's not," he replied, "but I'll make sure it doesn't happen again. Not on my watch." Jason stepped away, and for a moment, the cabin was silent again. Then Arya pulled out her tablet, opened her e-book, and started reading like nothing happened. That's what hit Jenna the hardest. Arya didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need to scream or cry. She had dignity. And the truth. And now the entire plane knew who she was. Not just the daughter of a billionaire, but someone who carried herself like one. Jenna retreated to the galley, heart pounding. Her hands shook as she reached for a water bottle, but not for Arya. She needed something to calm herself. Her mouth was dry. Her thoughts were worse. She had humiliated a child who had done nothing wrong. And the worst part, if the girl hadn't made a phone call, Jenna would have kept going. She leaned against the cabinet, eyes unfocused, as the plane moved smoothly through the air. No turbulence, just the kind inside her chest. In first class, Arya stayed in her seat, reading. Calm, unbothered. The woman across the aisle gently asked, "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Arya looked up. "I'm fine." But everyone could feel it. This wasn't about one flight. This wasn't the first time. And it probably wouldn't be the last. Jenna peeked around the corner. She watched the way Jason offered Arya a warm blanket. How the other passengers smiled at her now. Not out of pity, but out of respect. Jenna had spent her whole career demanding respect. Arya had earned it in 10 silent minutes. Captain Richard stepped out of the cockpit and made his way toward Arya's row. He crouched slightly beside her seat. "Miss James," he said quietly, "I wanted to personally apologize. Your father asked me to make sure you were treated like the VIP you are, but I think you already handled that part better than any of us could." Arya smiled. "Just a little." "Thank you," she said. The captain stood. "If there's anything else you need, just say the word." Arya nodded, and he returned to the front. Behind them, a man in business class murmured to his wife, "That girl didn't just earn her seat. She taught this crew something today." Jenna heard it all, and for the first time, the uniform she wore didn't make her feel proud. It made her feel small. Jenna stayed out of sight for most of the flight. She told herself it was to let things cool off, but the truth was harder to swallow. She didn't want to face the girl she underestimated. And even more, she didn't want to face the passengers who saw it all unfold. The captain had already filed an incident report. HR had been alerted mid-flight. Brandon James, had emailed a direct complaint to corporate while still on the phone with his daughter. Jenna's future? Shaky at best. She replayed her words over and over again. "This section isn't for you. Let's find your real seat. You can't just sit anywhere to feel special." Now, each one landed like a stone in her gut. In first class, Arya never once looked back at the galley. Not to gloat, not to smirk. She simply read her book, sipped her juice, and carried herself like someone who knew exactly who she was. Because she did. Jason, the younger attendant, walked by again. This time, he was checking in on all passengers, but his glance at Arya was longer, respectful, protective, even. "Doing okay?" he asked softly. Arya nodded. "Yes, you're very kind." Jason blinked. It was a simple sentence, but it hit hard. "You're very strong," he said back. A few rows down, a teenager who had been filming earlier whispered, "She's famous now, I swear. This is gonna go viral." The woman across the aisle leaned toward Arya again. "You handled everything better than most adults I've seen. I just didn't want to cry." Arya said honestly, "That's what people expect." The woman nodded slowly. "And that's why you're unforgettable." In the galley, Jenna wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She wasn't sure if it was guilt or regret, or maybe just the realization that her moment of judgment had revealed more about her than about the child she tried to put down. But the truth was this: Arya didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her silence had done the talking for her, and the whole plane had heard it loud and clear. The cabin lights dimmed slightly as the pilot's voice came over the speaker. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be beginning our descent into Los Angeles. Please fasten your seatbelts and return your seats to the upright position." Jason and another crew member moved through the aisles with calm, professional energy. Jenna didn't. She stayed frozen in the galley, watching the cabin from a distance, her hands shaking just enough to keep her from holding anything. She wasn't worried about turbulence, she was worried about landing. Back in first class, Arya quietly packed her tablet into her backpack. She adjusted her seatbelt and looked out the window. The clouds outside broke apart as the plane lowered toward the glowing lights of the city. Jason stepped up beside her seat once more. "We'll be landing in about 15 minutes, he said. "Do you need anything before we touch down?" Arya smiled faintly. "No, thank you." He nodded, then hesitated. "I just want to say, you reminded me today that calm doesn't mean weak. You're kind, but you're not someone people should mess with." Arya gave him a quiet thank you and looked back out the window. Meanwhile, Jenna finally stood up and walked slowly toward the front. Passengers watched her without blinking. She stopped by Arya's row. The moment stretched. "I'm sorry," Jenna said quietly, barely above a whisper. "Truly." Arya didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her eyes met Jenna's for just a second. Not angry, not cold, just disappointed. And that was worse than anything Jenna expected. From the corner of the cabin, a man muttered, "If that was my kid, you'd be on the next flight out of a job." Jenna turned pale. The wheels touched down. The brakes hissed. The plane slowed on the runway, as the cabin filled with the usual soft chatter, but this time it carried a different kind of energy. Not excitement, not fatigue. Respect. Respect for a girl who never shouted, but still made the whole world listen. The cabin door opened with a soft hiss, the stairs unfolding onto the private runway. Arya stood from her seat, straightened her hoodie, and slid her backpack onto one shoulder. No escort, no drama, just confidence. Jason stood at the front, smiling gently. "It was a pleasure having you on board, Miss James." Arya smiled back. "Thank you for being kind." The woman from across the aisle leaned toward her one last time. "You're going to do big things." Arya simply nodded. "I already am." Then she walked down the steps into the golden California sun. Waiting at the bottom of the stairs was a sleek, black SUV. The driver opened the door without a word. Standing next to the car, phone in hand, was Brandon James, her father. When he saw her, he smiled, proud, but not surprised. "You okay?" he asked. Arya nodded. "Handled it." He chuckled. "Did you?" Arya gave a small smirk. "Let's just say, everyone knows my name now." Back inside the plane, Jenna stood frozen by the galley. She had just watched the owner of the airline embrace his daughter, the same girl she tried to remove from first class. The captain stepped beside her. "There's someone from HR waiting inside the terminal," he said quietly. "They'll want to speak with you." Jenna didn't argue. She didn't make excuses. She just nodded, because she knew this wasn't about punishment. It was about accountability. Outside, Arya buckled herself into the back seat of the SUV. Her dad sat beside her, proud but quiet. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Jason. "We're already talking about you on the news. Just so you know, the whole crew is rooting for you." Arya smiled. Not because she went viral. Not because she was the daughter of a billionaire. But because for the first time, people weren't looking at what she wore or how old she was or what she looked like. They were looking at how she carried herself with grace, strength, and quiet power. And that would be her legacy.